Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to the Molten Modular DIY Corner. Today we're building a Vostok trace. A Vostok trace which is also built in collaboration with DivKid, which is very exciting. This is a module that scans between different inputs in order to produce different outcomes. It morphs between several different things to allow you to populate and interrogate your system with all sorts of different bits of modulation and changes and transitions. And we're going to build it, going to put it together in the kit that's come fresh from Thonk. I don't foresee it at this point being difficult. The bags of bits are relatively small. The panels are relatively small and ready to go. And the manual, the documentation, is extraordinary, which is something I've come to expect from Thonk. They really do go the extra mile. To give you an example, let's get a little bit closer on that. So here it is, it's model pages, 11 pages, where many of the pages are taken up with just good advice on how to build, the stuff that you need, the tools that you require, what a good soldering point looks like. Those are helpful things. Those are very helpful things. Before then, getting on to the actual kit. And there's pictures. There's pictures you can zoom in on, and there's arrows and things pointing to stuff. Talk about orientation, and all the bits and pieces are in there. I'm pretty impressed by this manual, having even just glanced through it. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to turn on my soldering iron. We're going to get into this kit. So it tells me there are 2 PCBs, so let's get into that straight away. Now it says that they may turn up sort of joined together. We often see this where you get the panels are together with sort of blanking bits in between, and you have to snap them. It's scary, but it's a real thing. You have to snap them apart. But mine have been done for me, which is nice. So I've got them ready here. Now I seem to have one PCB which has got a whole load of surface mount stuff already on. So a lot of the hard stuff has been done for us, which is nice. It depends on what sort of level of DIY kitting you wish to do. I mean, using surface mount like this does make modules much cheaper, but it also sort of takes away from what it is that we could be doing within the kit. So ultimately, what we're going to be doing in this kit is probably most of the front panel stuff, and that's worthwhile, particularly if you're new to building kits or you want to get something together quite quickly. Just having to deal with the front panel hardware and bits and pieces and a few extras is a good solid entry to building without it getting too complicated and without you running into the problems of doing something completely wrong and your kit not working. So there's a high probability that this is going to work itself out, and if there is a problem, it will just be on some kind of connection as opposed to putting in a resistor in the wrong place or a diode backwards. But we will see as we go. So the front PCB is this one. And this is the back PCB. And then we've got the front panel, like so. And then we have a bag of bits and a few other little bits in here. Knob bag. And some hardware little, I see what these are. These are connections between the boards. And we just get the one knob. Nice smart knob like that. Very nice. Okay, so let's have a look to see what we have. So we have a power cable. We have a number of patch sockets. That's a power connector. A nice knob. Switch. Some of these amazingly orange and flat square LEDs. The big interpolating scanning fader slider, what's it? A couple more of those. That is more or less it in that side of things. In this hardware bag, sure I've got everything out of there, We have a couple of knurlies, always appreciated. And some jumpers and bits. Okay. So let's see what it is we have to get to first. So locate the orange LEDs and place them on the front PCB as shown. Let me turn on my soldering iron. Now I've been sent this, some tinner. It is tip tinner. It came from Black and Blue, bless them. Adam at Black and Blue was watching my one of my DIY videos and just thought that I needed some help, which is true. It's true. I can't deny that help is needed, and apparently this is good stuff which helps keep the end of your soldering iron awesome. I'm not entirely sure what I do with it. Do I rub it in? I'm not. I mean, I guess I stick the end of the soldering iron into it. Do I? Ooh. Oh, okay. So it puts solder. I don't know. It makes the end shiny. Do I use it all the time? I don't know. I'm going to sit that over there for now. So what am I doing? So I'm locating the orange So there are orange LEDs. These here. And they go into one of the boards, the front one. What was the front one? No, front PCB. That's this one. Put that one to one side for a moment. So this is the one that we're dealing with. And these need to go into these LED slots here. Okay. Now, the orientation, as it says, is vital. You've got a short leg and you've got a long leg. You see that on there? Short leg, long leg. Now, long leg tends to be positive. It's not always the case, but that tends to be the way. Right, I'm going to need my, because my eyes are screwed, right, so I'm going to need to have this on so I know exactly what it is I'm doing. So on these LEDs, you've got a little arrow pointing. That's interesting. And it's saying on here that the short leg must go to the side with the white line. Okay, so as you can see on here, you've got like a stronger white line on one side than the other, and they're saying that must go next to the short leg, and everything is going on the opposite side to the surface mount. So it's on this side. This is where the screen print is. This is where it's labelled. This is our LED, and it's saying short leg goes in to the thicker line. So long leg goes in first. It's going to go on the other side, and that into there. I'm not entirely sure why they're not using kind of the standardization that you use for LEDs and diodes. But hey, what is also helpful is just to have a positive or a negative. But I guess they're doing that with this stronger line. And the stronger line is indicating that that's the negative side. But hey, I'm just talking. I'm just going to follow the instructions, which is that the short leg must go to the side with the white line, where the arrow's pointing. Are we getting all of this? Can I go in any closer? Yeah, I can. So you're seeing this here on the instructions. The arrow's pointing to there. That is where the short leg needs to go. Short leg to that side. Short leg, thick line. Short leg, thick line. Like that, yeah, looks great, looks great. Now be very careful with your soldering iron, as you are going to be soldering near to surface mounted bits and pieces. The LED should sit completely flush. Solder one leg and then check that it's flush against the PCB. If it's not sitting totally flush, then reflow. So you want these flat up against it, is what it's saying. So when you turn it upside down in order to solder it, that should help us. So when we do this, just make sure that that's all nice and flat. But what we'll do, we'll solder one leg of each and see how that looks. So I'm going to turn on some air in order to blow away the fumes. Put on my safety specs so I don't melt my eyeballs. Get some solder. And the idea is to solder one leg. So I'm going to heat the pad and the leg. I'm going to be mindful of all the surface mount that's around it. So I need to make sure that this is in the right sort of position where I can do this. I'm going to apply some pressure and some heat to about there. Going to try to keep everything under control. Add a little bit of solder. Hopefully that's been a good one. Now the pads on this are quite small, so I'm finding that my solder is just leaping onto my soldering iron rather than onto the pad. So it takes a little bit of focus, a little bit of patience. I did that again. But as I'm tipping it in towards it, it does then run onto the joint. Okay, so as you can see, those are all flush, which is great. So I soldered that all right. Had the weight of the board was keeping that all together, so that's looking pretty good to me. Just going to have a close look at the joints themselves. Yeah, they seem pretty solid. As I say, they're just the pads on these particular ones are just really small, so getting in your soldering iron into that space is not without challenge. So let's keep at it. Do the other leg now that we're happy with that. That's a slightly better angle, actually. That worked better. Coming in on the edge of my soldering iron. Yeah, that's much better. Got to be careful of that one because of the surface mount. Yep, that seemed to do it. Okay, that's looking pretty good to me. Looking pretty good. Now, it doesn't mention about cutting the legs off at this particular point. Alright, so I'm just going to make the assumption that we do, because it's what you do. You normally do. You normally would, and they'd normally mention it, but they don't appear to have at this point. So we're just going to take off those legs now that we're happy that it's done. You don't have to cut them absolutely as close to closeness, because also you want to be careful of the surface mount. Probably a little bit better than that one though. That's a bit rubbish. Give that another go from another angle. Okay, good. There you go. Nice and neat. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So, put the front PCB, which is this one, putting this aside for the moment. Locate the 10-pin shroud. That's this fella here. This is placed on the rear of the back one. So we're now onto the back one, the one that's got DivKid's face on it. And this goes at the back. Now you can see there's a nick here. So you can see that there's a nick here that's to do with the gap on this thing here also. And so that needs to match that. So that just goes into all the holes. It's got a nice tight fit actually. It's got a stripe here to tell you where -12 volts is, which is where the red line on your power cable goes. But the great thing about having a shrouded one is that it can only go in one way round, because this has the similar key bit on it here, so it can only go one way round, which is brilliant. I wish all Eurorack modules were like that. Again, it suggests soldering one pin and checking, so we will do that. Now to do this, you might have something with which to clamp it into, but I find just using extra bits like this is just to give it some degree of stability while soldering is plenty. So I will do it in that way. I'm going to heat up one leg. Present it with some solder, give it a moment. I'm just going to hold on to it because I want it to be nice and flat. I don't want it to wobble. So if you now look at that, that's now nice and flat. Good, so I can do the rest. That's looking lovely. Lovely. Right, next. So locate the pin sockets in the bag. These are placed on the back PCB on the same side as the other ones, as the pre-soldered components. I think we're talking about this stuff. I think so. Mine don't look exactly like the paper, like the manual, which is a little bit concerning. Am I missing anything? Just going to check. No. Okay. So what we have here, I think, is that the picture here in the manual is not actually right. It's showing these larger, chunkier headers, which don't exist in the pack as far as I can see. I have all these sort of 2-pin ones. I have a lot of those, but I don't have any of these larger ones. Now, looking down at the manual here, all of these are little 2-pin ones. So I think they just used a slightly generic picture there in the instructions. Not to worry, not a problem, because the instructions are very clear, so we know what we're going to do. Right, so place all the sockets as shown. So we're going to need this. This is the same ones we used before, this one here. We've just got to put everything as they are showing. So there's one at the top. So you can see on the board that you've got these, and it's these that we are talking about. So I believe one of these little squidgy things here goes into each of those little spaces. Now this is the sort of thing that's going to easily fall out. So just try to keep it upright, and we'll see if we can get this soldered without them all falling out all over the place. So that's a bunch there, like so. See it all wobbling about. That's super. So these must also be completely flush. Just solder a pin, making sure the part is flush and reflowing and adjusting if required, and then proceed to solder the remaining joints. So we have them like the picture, all on the same side as the surface mount, and it definitely says to solder them. So it wants us to put something flat in order to turn it over. So the way I generally do this, I happen to have a handy piece of plastic, which is actually a filter for a light, but that's not important right now. What's important is I place it over the top, hold it nice and steady, and I turn it over. Oh, I lost one. Yeah, no, I lost one. All right, let's try that again. Let's try that again. So you want these to be completely flat, so taping them isn't necessarily going to be the best solution, because they don't always tape up particularly tight. So you want to have something that's going to be on it nice and tight. I think I've got a slight problem with with these being too high here, so I'm just going to come off those, try and turn it over again. No, same problem. Right, what am I doing? It's flexing. It's flexing. I can see the flexingness. Right. Let's give it one more go. Come on, I'm not going to give it one more go. I'm going to give it as many goes as it needs. So I'm going to hold it there, turn it over nice and quick. Attempt to use all of my powers to get this on here correctly. Now these are all going to need to be soldered. So I'm having a little bit of a trouble with the height of the capacitors at this end, which is raising this up. So actually having it on this thing means that they can sit over the lip without that being a problem. Yeah, that's a handy tip. Okay, So this is going to take a little bit of patience and power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this end one here. Now I'm going to put pressure down just to try to make sure that that is going to be flat. Now, before I take the soldering iron off, I'm going to hold on to this and then release it in the hope that that solidifies and holds it nice and tight. Now, of course, pushing the soldering iron against a pin does move it, so I kind of get the feeling they're all going to be slightly offset. But we'll have a look. Going to hold it. Yeah, just make sure that that stays on the edge. Just be careful you're not going to tip it over. Again, hold it and then release. That's looking really good, actually. If I do say so myself. That's in there. Okay, I wonder if I got away with all of that. So, turning it back over, there is a little bit, you see, they're not 100% straight, particularly this one and this one. Those are a bit on a wobble. They are a bit on a wobble. I think I could probably do a little bit better. I think I can do better on those two. So, what I think I will do, I'm just going to heat up the leg and then hopefully with my finger just straighten it up a little bit. Like that. Pause for a second. See, that's much straighter. See that much straighter. So this one also. Heat that up. Just moved a little bit just to get it that little bit straighter. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Looking better than it was. At any rate. Proceed to solder the remaining joints for all the sockets. Right, so we'll do the rest now. Now that they're in there solidly, doing the other leg should not be a problem. That should come nice and easy. Now locate the small pin headers and insert them into the sockets. So now we're going to be using all of these. Seem to have a couple of those left over. Is that important? Who can tell? Who can tell? I've got them all in as far as I know. No, I haven't. Have I missed one down there? Oh, I think I have, No, I haven't. Yes, I have. Oh, have I missed two down there? Yeah. Oh dear. See, look, I've got a couple left, which means I completely missed these ones either side of the capacitors. Would you look at that? So I've got two more to stick in there. But this is that slight problem we have where these capacitors are being too tall. And so when I try to do these, I'm not going to be able to push down in order to keep them steady. So that's a little bit of trouble right there. That's a little bit of trouble. Now what I could do, I'm going to have a bit of a brainwave. This has actually worked out for the better, I think. I'm just going to say that it is, right? Alright, okay, right. Keep talking. You know what you're doing. So these little things here, right? Do they have, I think that essentially passes through, so they can be any length. There's no sort of right way up in order to have those. So what I'm going to do is, because I have this slight problem with the capacitors being too tall, so that when I attempt to solder those in there, I'm going to find that they're going to drop out a little bit. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do to remedy that is I'm going to put all of these in now and put them into the ones I'm going to put in here, and that'll give an extra height in order to make sure that works better. That's the plan. I think it's a good one. I like it. I'm going to give that a go. So these are all going in to here. Mind your fingers. You don't just push them straight into your fingers. Because these are going to be soldered onto the other board. They're all a bit wonky themselves. Don't worry, keep at it, keep at it. See, the wonderful thing about DIY is that it is always a little bit edgy. There's always room for slight small mishaps, but there's also room for getting things slightly wrong and still getting through it, which is what we're doing at the minute. We're going slightly wrong, but we're still going to get through it. So I think I can turn this over with these here, and I think it's all just going to brilliantly work. Okay, that's my plan. So those are stabbing in a little bit, but now I've got proper sort of purchase and weight and pressure I can put down here in order to make sure that those are flat. That's the plan. Let's do one leg, see how that comes off. Try not to melt this thing here. Alright, so I'm going to need a bit of a finger just to add some pressure. Alright, that's one on. Let's try this side. Let's see whether that paid off. No, not really. Look at that one. That's a bit on the wonk, that is. That one's not too bad. That one's definitely got a bit of a side eye to it. So I'm going to straighten that up. For that, I'm going to take out the pin, because otherwise the pin's just going to transfer the heat straight into my finger. So I'm going to melt it and just readjust. There we go. That's much better. This one, that was good all the time. So good. These things are a challenge, you know. It's exciting. It's exciting. So I can solder the other side. Both of these. And now I have all of those in. Lovely. That looks a bit wonky as well. Okay, great. Now, place the front PCB onto the headers to sandwich them together. You might need to wiggle it a little bit and nudge them to line up properly. And once they're all aligned and good, you can then solder it together. So we've got to make sure this is the right way up. Now you can see on the back of this PCB, you've got all this screen print labeling, which is where these are going to be going into. Now you could do them separately. You could put all of the pins into this one and solder it. The problem with that is that the chances are that you're not going to have them aligned when you then sandwich it together. So the idea of what we're trying to do here is sort of solder it in situ, so that we know currently they're all a bit wobbly and they all wobble into position, and once they're there we can then solder them, and then we know it's going to exactly match up. That is the point. That's the point of what we're trying to achieve right now, and that's going to cause us a little bit of wobbling and wiggling in order to get that to work, but ultimately that is going to be a more positive solution. Come on. So that's good. I need a bit of wiggling on that one. I might need a pair of tweezers at this point. Alright. Oh no, keep it together. Oh, flipping it. That's in. That's in. Middle's in. Yes. Alright, that seemed to work better. Just keep it all in there. So as you can see, all of those are now through. And what I need to do, and the boards are also, you know, stacked on top of each other, which is what you want. You don't want something sticking out slightly oddly. I've just got to think of a way of placing this down that I'm going to be able to lean into, considering I've got this here on the bottom. So if I use a couple of these, is that going to give me stability? Yeah, I think so. I think that's going to be alright. So with these ones we can just solder them because we know they're in place. They're not going to be out of alignment. Let's do something nice in the middle. Okay, that's good. Do this other middle one here first. That should hold it all together nicely. Let's get to this end. Now just be careful not to melt your LEDs. These ones in particular are soldering so much better than the tiny little LED pads. Yeah. Okay, good. So now it's time to move on to the remaining parts of the front PCB. So you've got to separate them again. So just gently, gently, it says, just all comes apart. Yeah, right, no worries. Separate them, put the back panel out of the way, and now we've got to stick on the jacks and the slidery thingy and the knob, but it says don't solder them yet. So when it comes to your patch sockets here, they have this twangy leg out the front, which is like the earth leg. And you've just got to work out what that goes into. Okay, so as you can see on here, I think you're going to have two patch sockets facing each other, and the wangy leg needs to go into one of these holes out here, and they are slightly offset. So you stick one in and it bends slightly. Do you see that? To go in. Put this one in next to it. So stick that in first, and then bend it, and then going the other way, you've got another one facing it which goes into the hole next to it and then goes in. Got that? See that? Yeah? Cool. It goes in, and then you've got another one down here which has its own little hole. Oops, get that right. Okay, don't solder them yet. Then we've got this thing here. Now this has one pin at one end, two at the other, so it can only go one way around. And as you can see on the board, there's two down there and one round there. So you've got to put it in the right way around. It'll only go in the right way around. And it drops in there as if it's going to fall out at any moment. But don't worry, we're going to get to this. We're going to get to this. So now we've got the switch. The switch doesn't appear to have any orientation. It doesn't mention it. So this goes in there. And then finally you've got the knob with its 3 pins and its supporting structure. 3 pins go towards the bottom here. So put those in first, and then you push it against the supports, and hopefully it will snap in. No, see, completely failed. Didn't get all of me lugs in. There we go. That should be relatively secure in there. If you turn it over, it will all fall out, so don't do that. So it says remove the nuts from the jacks. Oh, I didn't do that. So all of these have got nuts on, so we're going to have to carefully take those off. So they're going to go on the front panel. Now place the front panel over the components, secure it with a couple of nuts, Well, let's do that first. So this is going to go over the top. Give it a little bit of movement and it should go over that without any bother. And then what you want to do is sort of finger tight these nuts over the top so it's pulling the front panel down on itself in order to help secure them. But you don't want it to be so tight that it's pulling stuff out, because none of it's soldered in yet. Okay, good. Then we have this black one here which goes over the knob at the end. And holds it all together. Okay, that still potentially can fall out of there, so that's something to think about. So, solder the red slide switch first. Solder just one pin, check that the switch alignment looks good and that the switch can move freely. Okay, it's going to be held there. Slowly and carefully, be precise. Right, well let's just do the switch then before we worry about anything else, because when we turn this over, obviously this is going to be sticking out, so it's going to be difficult to hold it completely straight. So I'm just going to turn it over and you can see that this fader falls out so that's not good, but that's how it is, whereas the switch is nicely clamped in there. So we're just going to solder a leg on the switch and make sure that that works. Nice, big, lovely, chunky pad. Yeah, no bother. Let's do the other side. Yeah, all good. Just do that last middle leg then. So proceed next by soldering the slider, soldering one pin and then checking that it's not scraping and then reflow. So this is the tricky bit. So I need to put that on something so it's not just going to fall straight out as I turn it over. So I need that to be on something. If you've got a bit of foam or something like that knocking around, that I can do that on. So because this is now the knob, the top of the knob is now over the side of this, that can push on that slightly better. So that's one way of doing it, and I think I can hold that in place while I solder it. So I think that's going to work. So we're just going to do the one pin, which is here in the middle, and just make sure that that's all right. So I'm going to use pressure from the soldering iron to sort of get this straight while heating that up. Applying a little bit of solder, again holding it and then releasing the soldering iron. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. That's the way to do it. Solder the other two bits. Careful of the surface mount. Just got to be so careful. You do not want to accidentally desolder one of those tiny little bits, because that will give you pain. Alright, looking good. Looking good, looking good. Now it's time to solder the remaining solder joints, pot and the jacks. Cool. We can continue on this, or is it going to be alright wobbling? See, that's relatively stable, and all these other bits are being held in by the front panel, so they're not going anywhere, so I don't need it to be rock solid, as it were. So I'm going to start with the enormous lugs on the knob. takes quite a bit of heat and solder. The other three. Good, then I'm just down this end for all of the patch sockets. Just check that you haven't bridged anything between those quite close patch socket bits. That's looking alright. Is that everything? Got nothing else sticking through that I forgot about? Don't think so. It's looking alright. Before putting the boards together, trim the 3 solder joints of the green alpha pot so that they are almost flush with the surface of the PCB to prevent contact between the pot and components on the back that sits underneath it. So, really? These 3 things here? Crikey. I mean, I guess because you've got, yeah. So you're going to see the problem here is that when you put these together, those slightly too tall capacitors are going to interfere with these bits of the pot. So we're going to need to cut those down to make them slightly more flush. So I see what they're saying. Now you haven't got a whole lot to play with, but I'm not entirely sure that that's brilliantly soldered. Just going to reflow this one, make sure it's got enough solder on it. Okay. So I've now cut those a bit more flush. So that should be good. Connect the PCBs together, place the knob on the pot and attach the power cable. Da, da, da. It's almost suggesting that we might be done. So these 2 go back together. Make sure you got them the right way around. They should just plug in perfectly because you already had it perfect before. Now I confess that I would quite like there to be a screw. Because it feels like it can come apart really easy. So just a way of screwing that together would have been a final flourish, I think. I kind of get the feeling you're going to be taking this module out of your system that's still got the power cable attached, and the whole thing's just going to come apart like that. But hey, let's hope not. Besides, we're never going to be taken out of our system again, are we? No, gracious no. So on the knob, for the knob, turn your pot all the way around to the left. This can only go one way because it's got the flat bit here for the knob. So put that on there. Should be able to find its way. Push it down. And it's there. Beautiful. So it suggests putting the power cable in, which it does, as I say, because of the power cable and the notch in the shroud. It can only go in one way round, so that is the only way it will go. And this goes into your case, the whole thing doesn't blow up, and you have a wonderful interpolated scanning time. That's the plan. Anything else to do? The build is done. Further information here. Okay, great. So there we are. There we have it. The Vostok trace. So I'm now going to have to plug it in. Make sure that everything's working. So we'll put it into a little bit of rack, make sure things are happening, then plug some things into it. Oh, I need to tighten up my screws on the front. You might want to use a pair of pliers if you can be careful not to scratch the front panel, but otherwise I tend to find finger tight is probably enough. Great, super. So let's plug it in, see if it smokes. Okay, right. So here's the trace. Here's a bit of Eurorack and stuff. Plug it in. Now, what we do first, generally speaking, is just turn it on to make sure it doesn't smoke, which means there's not some terrible problem with the power that's been shorted or something along those lines. We're just looking for a little bit of potential life. Look, we've got an LED. Oh, look, that one, this side, that one. That's a good sign. That's a good sign of workingness, that is. Oh, that's really nice. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, so we're pretty confident that this is a goer. So I'm going to screw it in and then have a quick look to see if it does what it's supposed to do. DivKid has, of course, done a huge, lovely, gorgeous video on exactly how it works. So here I'm just going to make sure that it functions. So it has 4 inputs, 1 output. So if I was to, what should I do? I've got a thing going. I need to have some sound going on. There we go. So I think what I'm going to use is some modulation to the filter. Got a filter here. This is the VCO that's making the sound. Got just a filter going on here. And I'm going to modulate that with the output of the trace. So I'm going to take in an envelope into input 1. And I've got the Batumi here, which can give me some different LFOs. Into 3. And 4. So that's 4 different inputs. And then going to take the out of the trace into the filter cutoff. So let's make these very different. So far, if I bring it down to 1, you can hear the envelope working on the filter, yeah? So I push it up to 2. I then get an LFO. Push it up to 3. I get a different LFO. And up to 4, there's a different one. That's really nice. Now, of course, with my last LFO, I could put that in to the scan. And that'll move between them for you. Like that. The Vostok DivKid trace. What a lovely thing! What a totally lovely thing. The way it's moving from modulation to modulation. I mean, this was not some kind of practice jam or anything. I just thought, what can I do with it? I know I can put some modulation through a filter. And so I did 4 different sorts of modulation going through a filter, and it's just a beautiful little experience, the way that scans backwards and forwards, how it brings in these changes and these transitions that are just there. It sort of revolutionized this little melody through this oscillator into this filter, into this thing of absolute changing, morphing beauty. What a great little thing. That's fantastic. I wasn't expecting to be quite so taken with it quite so quickly. Fantastic. What a great job. Well done, Vostok DivKid. Fantastic little module. Like it a great deal. Now, the build was relatively straightforward. There were a few little fiddly bits, a few little inconsistencies with the manual, but nothing that you couldn't get over with just, spending more than a glance at what it is you're supposed to do next. So very easy to bring together ultimately. Didn't take a whole load of time. And you get a beautiful module out the other end. So there you are. Hope that was helpful. In the meantime, go and make some tunes.